Um, right. So welcome everyone to the May Summit. You have here our speaker, Tanya Janca, the CEO and founder of We Hack Purple. So over to you, Tanya.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the Open Security Summit for having me again. The first time I went to this, it was really awesome. I want you to know that one of my colleagues is here. Her name's Akira. And if I have trouble helping you, she might reach out to help you if you're stuck somewhere. And so she's not just another participant. She actually works with me at Bright. And so just so you know, you're like, why does this lady know so much? That's why. Okay, so I want to talk today about adding a dynamic application security testing tool to your CI/CD pipeline. And a dynamic testing tool means it basically, there's different types of AppSec tools, and this is one of the original types. It's very popular, lots of people use them. And basically your app has to be running somewhere, like on a container, even in localhost, on a web server, whatever. And then it will interact with your application, sending requests, reading responses, deciding to send you something else, etc. And so basically, we want to talk about how to put this into a pipeline and then make it actually work well. Because if you just take the default one with all the default settings and put it in, a lot of them it won't be a good time and it won't really obey the rules of DevOps, if that makes sense. And we're then going to copy or clone a CI/CD pipeline and play around with running a DAST ourselves. We're going to find some vulnerabilities. We're going to change some settings around and see how we can kind of make it faster and faster. And then we'll wrap up with some free resources and other places where you can learn more. So I called it at first adding DAST to a CI/CD pipeline, but then I remembered the first time I ran a DAST in a CI/CD pipeline, and it took forever. It was like, you can't just run this for 6 hours, Tanya. Our CI/CD used to take like 12 minutes. Now it takes 6 hours. This is not cool. And so I want to talk about how you can do this, but without losing any friends. Because when you throw lots of false positives, or when you have it run a really long time, it can make people angry or frustrated or upset with the security team. Historically, the security team has been seen as like a gate, or they make me jump through all these dumb hoops, but they don't actually make my app more secure. Or they throw in all these tests, they break my pipeline for no reason with this false positive, or it takes forever. And so I want to talk about basically how we can do a good job of this so that we still maintain awesome relationships with dev and ops, or the DevOps team, however you want to call them, but still get our jobs done. So we're going to concentrate a lot on how to do this, how to do the testing we need to without ticking off every other team. I stress this because it's actually really quite important. We can't do our jobs if we don't have good relationships with other people in our organization, like specifically security people. It's really hard. So let's continue. So who the heck am I? So here we go. I'm Tanya. This is me, where I'm wearing white instead of pink. Basically, I'm the director of developer relations and community at Bright. I'm the founder of the We Hack Purple community. I wrote a book called Alice and Bob Learn AppSec. I'm an advisor for some companies. So in July, it's been 25 years in tech. So that's a long time. I blog and do other nerdy things on the internet. So if you enjoyed this, there's lots of other things that I do that you could participate in. I'm always trying to share knowledge. But basically, I'm a giant nerd who's really obsessed with the security of software. Essentially, that's the important message. And hopefully you're like, she's done a lot of stuff. I'm willing to listen. That's the purpose of this slide, is to just be like, I am qualified. Please don't leave. So what's next? Okay, so we're trying to solve a problem. So I like to kind of tell you at the beginning what we're going to talk about, then I go through it. Then I often try to summarize at the end, because I want to make sure you bring certain concepts back to work with you. So insecure software is a big problem. And you probably already know this if you're at the Open Security Summit. We are Like we, as in the application security or software security industry, we're not winning. We're not doing, like, some apps are awesome, some apps aren't awesome. Still, there's a lot of apps on the internet that are in rough shape, and we're the number one cause of data breach of all the different technologies. And I would like us to stop being number one on that list. We are trying to work with people in DevOps, and DevOps people have some requirements, and their main requirements are accuracy. So if we're going to put something in a pipeline, it can't throw a ton of false positives. No one is going to tolerate that. I know that a lot of security tools can provide a lot of false positives, so we're going to talk about how to try to avoid that for a pipeline. We also need to be very fast. We can't be a giant bottleneck anymore. No one's going to put up with this. Like if they, are running their pipeline 12 times a day, and then we come along and it takes a whole day to run, no one's going to be like, that's cool, no problem. So the last one is automation. So we can still do some things manually, but if we want to be in a pipeline, we must automate the things we're doing inside there. And we need to automate as much as we can, because first of all, like, there's not enough time to do every single thing that we want to manually. When we do things manually, there's errors, there's human errors, there's computer errors, et cetera, et cetera. And also doing things manually is super boring. And so we need to meet these requirements if we want to work with DevOps people. And if you are working at a shop where your software developers are doing DevOps, guess what? You want to work with those DevOps people, and you really, really want to get along with them. And I don't mean you have to be best buds that go out for beers every week, but they need to see you as a peer who is helping make their apps more secure, not a gate that's in their way that they need to get around so that they can get their products out. We need to add value. I'm going to go over this again and again, but it's really important that we add value. We help them make their apps more secure, as opposed to, hey, you guys, slow down. I'm not ready for that. You're not going anywhere. We're not their parents or their peers. Okay, so DevSecOps. So that is what we need to do. If we want to be doing security as part of DevOps, we have some requirements for that. So first of all, we need to test from multiple angles. We can't get a good look at an app if we only look at it one way. And so I'll talk about different types of testing that we can do, but we're going to concentrate on dynamic testing in this presentation. We need to have good relationships. And like I said, you don't have to be super, super close and spend constantly tons of time together, but you need to have mutual respect. You need to have empathy for the things they're trying to achieve, like their deadlines, their feature requests that they have to do. Like, we have to fit in with that. We can't just trample what they're doing, which is a thing security has traditionally done in the past. And what we want is for them to be fixing bugs as soon as possible in the system development lifecycle. So as soon as we can, we want to be able to discover these bugs, deliver, validate that they're real. If our systems don't validate for us, we need to deliver that information as clearly as possible to the right people. The earlier we fix a bug in the system development lifecycle, the cheaper and easier it is to do. And the system development lifecycle is the process that software developers follow and live and breathe every single day so that they can make a piece of software. And I'm not going to go through the entire system development lifecycle and how we fit into it, but basically, the earlier we can get them in any project or any effort to fix bugs, the cheaper and faster and easier it is to do. And it's super important because we need to save money, and also because if a bug's left till the end, guess what? Oh, we'll just do that in version 1.1, Tanya, don't worry. And then it's never fixed. Anyway, you can tell I've seen that a lot. Okay, so what is a dynamics? What do I mean by DAST? So DAST stands for Dynamic Application Security Testing. But basically what it means is it is dynamic, which means the app is moving and changing and doing things while it talks to it. Static means it just stays still. And so a static test would look at the written code. We're not looking at the written code. We're looking at what is on, sorry, there's a question in the chat, but it's Akira. So basically a dynamic testing tool interacts with your application. So sometimes some of them will watch you use the app, and sometimes they can just automatically find everything in the app for you. And it really depends on which tool or vendor that you're using, but they all work differently in how they discover the vulnerabilities. But the idea is they send requests, they read responses, they change a bit, and then they send another request. They're like, oh, really? And it's like a conversation going back and forth. And at some point it says, I am pretty sure I just found a security bug. It finds as many as it can for you, and then it stops. And so we're going to talk about settings and all these other things, but dynamic testing, well, actually, why DAST? Or why Bright, actually, and then I'll explain. Oh, wait, just a second. Sorry, just a second. So like in my slides, it's saying why, oh, there we go. So I skipped a slide by accident. Sorry about that. Okay, so why do we want to start with a dynamic scanner? So I start with a dynamic scanner specifically because anyone on the internet with very little training can run a dynamic scanner on any public website and find a whole bunch of exploitable vulnerabilities in your app. And I remember when I found this out, I was so scared. I was like, oh my gosh, so anyone right now could just be looking at my app on the internet, and like they don't have to be a super advanced exploit writer, security researcher, expert. Dum-dums can run a DAST because they're very easy to use. And then they can just find all my vulnerabilities. Oh my gosh. I'm like, so we better fix those ones first, right? Because people on the internet generally, unless you're using open source tools, or I mean, if you're using if you are using an open source repo to store your code, then they can get a copy of your code as well. But quite often companies and private businesses do not share their code on the internet. And so that means your code's a secret, so they can't run a SaaS tool or an SCA tool or other types of tools on it. They can just use a dynamic scanner, like that's their only option to see, and manual testing, but then you need an expert. Like if an expert security person wants to attack your site, it's very different than just any old person, perhaps like a teenager or someone who's like a not advanced cyber criminal can just run a DAST on your tool. So I'm like, if anyone can do that, I better fix those things. The other reason why I chose DAST to start with is that it's really easy. Like I said earlier, I found when I started with SAST tools, I found it very, very difficult to like figure out what was a true positive, what was a false positive. I found it just really difficult to understand. It would take forever to get it running, forever and ever and ever to like look through the results. I found with a DAST the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, I found vulnerabilities. I'm a hacker now. Or I felt that way. Yeah, and I also got a lot of satisfaction for how fast I found things that were wrong. So this is why DAST. So why Bright? So we are going to use Bright's DAST tool today, and part of the reason is because I work there. Full disclosure, I work there. They acquired my company around 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I've been friends with them for years, since almost right since they started the company. Before I started We Hack Purple, and like a year and a half ago, I joined their advisory board, and then it was like, it made sense that our companies became one big company, and like we have a lot of fun working together. And so I helped guide the design of this tool. So that's why I would choose this tool. So I am extraordinarily positively biased, and you should be aware of that. Yeah. Okay. So what is DevOps? So as a spoiler, DevOps is not paying one person to do 2 jobs. One of my cousins was like, my boss told me today he wants us to do DevOps. And basically he laid off the ops person, and now I have to do both. And I think DevOps sucks. I'm like, that is not DevOps. Just to be clear, that's not what DevOps is. Okay, so, so DevOps is a new and more modern way to build software. Like years ago, like when software started, we didn't have any specific thing that we were doing to build software. Like at the very beginning, there was no specific methodology. Then eventually like a whole bunch came out, like rapid application development, waterfall, etc. And then of all the first ones, waterfall won out. And it's where it's very slow. You would ask them what they want, and then you'd spend about a year building it. and then you would show it to them. And quite often they'd be like, that's not what I wanted. And you wouldn't get lots of feedback. It didn't go that well. So then we started doing agile. Agile was a lot better. We would do smaller cycles, and it's like, I built this feature. What do you think? You like it? Cool. I built this feature now, feature number 2. What do you think? It's cool? Okay. And we started doing smaller cycles of faster cycles to release things. But then with DevOps, it is not only, a way to build software, it is an entire culture shift. And we talk about, so basically, I'm going to go over briefly the three ways of DevOps, like the rules you must follow, but it is a more modern and faster way to build software. It involves culture, and it involves especially efficiency. Efficiency and speed are the just 2 most important things when doing DevOps. So there's some comments. Lewis says, we just finished our CI/CD pipeline at my company recently and have an SCA and SAST in place and are starting the CI/CD pipeline work. So this is very timely for me. And Leandro says, if you got CI down, CD comes naturally. Hopefully it follows this trend for you. Nice. And I also agree, it does. Okay, so a bit of a review, so like a bit more on CI/CD, and then we're going to talk about strategies for DAST. So when people say CI/CD, they mean pipeline software. And basically it is software that tests and deploys other software and infrastructure. So if you're doing infrastructure as code, it can basically create a container or virtual machine or a platform as a service, and then it can build a bunch of software on top of it. It can turn it all on and tell it to connect, and it can do all of this automatically. And quite frankly, it's super beautiful. Like just seeing all of your work come to life in front of you automatically, it's really amazing. And having it only take just a few minutes. To have a DevOps environment or culture, there's 3 rules, or the 3 ways of DevOps, according to the DevOps handbook, the Phoenix project, etc. So we need efficiency for the entire system, not just Tanya's part. Because I definitely used to just work to make my parts perfect, and we're like, I don't care about everyone else, that's your problem, this is my problem, and my problem's going great. It means that we have to have fast feedback. And especially, we need to have feedback that is accurate. So I don't care if the tool is really fast, but half of the stuff it points out is false positives. So it needs to be accurate, and this information needs to get to the right people. I worked somewhere once, and they had this SAST tool, and it would run in every pipeline, but it wouldn't send you the information. You had to like log out of all the stuff you were doing, go to this separate area of the network, log into the tool, and then search for your stuff. And then you could, and no one ever did. No one would ever do that. They're just like, your bugs aren't in our bug system. We're not getting the feedback in our other dashboards. And it was a disaster. So feedback needs to be fast, it needs to be accurate, and it needs to get to the right people. And then the last one, sometimes there's names for this. So sometimes people call it risk taking. Some people call it continuous learning. Some people call it taking time to improve your daily work. But the idea of this is that if you reserve a certain amount of time each month to try to improve everything, so that might be where you're like, I'm going to yank this part out, do more tuning and more stuff to it to make sure it's even better, then I'm going to put it back in. So I can save everyone time every single day. That is the idea of continuous learning. Prakash says, how do you filter false positives? We are going to talk about that. Literally, we're going to start talking about it in the next slide. Strategies. So I'm going to keep your question for a bit, Prakash, because you're basically ahead of me. And then the last thing that I want to say is not all security testing needs to happen in a pipeline. So sometimes, like especially when I started, I put every single thing in and I ran everything on full blast, and my pipeline took 10 zillion years to make it run. And it was not good. And so I learned slowly, like if I want this to run really fast, I could do this, this, and this. If I want, I found a false positive, so I was using NotBray, a different tool. And I kept finding false positives. So I would take them and I would suppress those results just for that specific app, because I had looked through, the devs were like, this is no good. And so I I would add a context layer to it saying like this one, and this one, don't report it because they're false positives. And then like the stuff we were getting from then on were true positives. And I was like, I am awesome. Okay, so let's talk strategy for putting a dynamic scanner in a CI/CD. So these are ideas of things you could do. And the first one is not the one you should do. So you could just run your dynamic scanner on full blast. So don't do any types of settings, just put it in there and run it on full blast. And then you can lose all your friends if you do this. So I would generally not do a long scan with everything for the first time in a real pipeline that other people are counting on. Usually I take a copy of their pipeline and then I, run it in full blast in my own copy that's going nowhere. I'm not deploying stuff. I'm just like seeing how their system's built, putting it somewhere safe where I can run stuff on it. And I'm like, okay, it's full blast. Now I'm going to start tuning things and making it faster and more accurate. And so don't do this in production. Don't put this and block other people's things. Take a copy of what they're doing, run it like run your own copy, deploy it to like a container or a safe place where the security team can do stuff. And then you start refining it. So then we're going to start doing the best stuff out there. Oh, there's a vendor who filters out almost all false positives for you. White hat security. Okay, cool. Bright.
So Tanya, can I just add a comment here?
Yes.
One of the areas that I think is very important for security teams to always be finding places to add a lot of value, especially because sometimes we can actually get some extra funding for development resources, etc., is in the CI automation and pipelines. Because like you mentioned here, this is very dangerous when there's one copy of QA, one copy of the things. What you want is to be able to almost have a disposable environment that you can run your DAST against, because sometimes you actually want to compare before and after. So I've done cases in the past where we actually use security to fund the improvement of the CI pipeline. We did it from a point of view of saying, look, we're doing it for security, but the real benefit was also for development. And I think that's a great area for security to add a huge amount of value to the environment, and especially if you then have security champions or other types of security resources in the teams, where you can say, look, both of us need a security pipeline, or both of us need a better CI pipeline. Let us help with that, because we need that to point to our DAST tools. We need an environment that we could spin up whatever the application is and then destroy it in the end.
Yes.
Or else you have this problem.
Yes. It's not really like. So first of all, I agree 100%. And yeah, this is just not especially if everyone's using one single pipeline, or one team, they're using one pipeline, they're all depending on it. And then you go in and clumsily put in this giant tool that's not tuned, that goes really, it's just a way to break relationships and like really stress people out. And so taking a copy in a safe place and doing it there is better. Carlos says, wouldn't it?
You're good. No, good.
Oh, so Carlos says, wouldn't it be a good idea to also scan the internet-facing production application in addition to this pipeline copy? Carlos, yes, definitely. We're going to talk about using a dynamic scanner as well outside the pipeline after we go over how to put it in a pipeline. So I am a firm believer. I want to get every single tiny bit of value I can from a tool that I pay for. When I worked in the government, I had super, super small budget. And so I never had enough money to do all the things I wanted. So if I paid for a tool, I'm like, I'm going to make this tool my slave. I'm going to make it do every single thing I can think of. I'm going to have it running here, running there, running over here. So definitely, yes, absolutely. You want to also do scans in production, ideally. Okay. So the next thing in a CI/CD pipeline, so you have your own copy of the pipeline and you're not interrupting anyone else. So you're publishing to a safe place where you can be destructive and you're doing your tests. So to refine it further, I like to refine my scope. So a HAR file is basically an HTML archive file. So if you use something like Selenium and you're testing your app, so let's say, I want to test the login screen. So it's like, hi, I'm so-and-so. This is my password. You press the button and you record this activity within a HAR file, an HTML archive file. So it's like .har. That's why I call it a HAR file, HAR. And so if your QA team is recording lots of these for you, this could be really awesome. So let's say you're doing sprints of work. So let's say you're doing 3-week sprints. So for 3 weeks, we're going to build this feature and test it and release it. For this 3 weeks, we're going to build another feature, test and release it. So they record a HAR file for you, you shove it into your dynamic scanning tool, and most of the ones on the market will accept this. And then it will just be like a scalpel, very, very precise. And it just goes through that one part, that one feature or whatever things are in that test, and it ignores the entire rest of the app. So if you're doing one feature at a time releases and you have a QA team that's recording these HAR files, these are super valuable. You can feed it into your DAST and your dynamic scanner will take a fraction of the time. So do you want to like create a HAR file for every single application and every single feature in your entire organization? No way, that sounds awful. But if you have a QA team that is doing automated testing, become their friend and get copies of those files, put it into your HAR, that HAR file into your dynamic scanner in your pipeline, and it will run extremely fast and efficiently. So Carlos says, this is an amazing method of testing that I'm not seeing used with my clients, unfortunately. Okay, so I'm just seeing like Akira's answers, but I don't feel like I need to repeat those because you can see them. Okay, so this is one way that you can do. So the next one is only test what worries you, which sounds super ridiculous at first. You're like, you can't just do work you want to, Tanya, you have to do all the work. What I mean is that quite often application security teams are targeting certain vulnerabilities. So like whenever I start consulting somewhere, I take all their old scans, smash it into Microsoft Excel, and I try to find what the top 3 vulnerabilities are that are pervasive across the organization. Everyone keeps making this mistake. Why? And then I concentrate on trying to smash those ones out, especially if they're critical or very high. And it's like, why am I seeing injection in production? Why am I seeing cross-site scripting like in 100 of our 200 apps? And so I just test for those things at first. So the test is very fast. As long as what you have chosen is not brute force, because the brute force attacks are very slow. But basically then it's looking at all the inputs, but it's only doing 1 or 2 quick tests. This will make it go a lot faster. And then once I start seeing, okay, so those are disappearing, people are releasing fixes, I'm not seeing new ones, I've done a lunch and learn on each one of these, I've talked to devs, I've explained how to find it, how to squash it, and it's starting to disappear. I'm like, cool. Now I'm going to take a look again and do like full dynamic scans. And I want to see what else is popping up a lot repeatedly. Because if you can get rid of patterns and start teaching, so then you just have one-off types of vulnerabilities, life is way better because you don't have people repeating the same mistake over and over again. And so only test what worries you. I mean, like specific targets that you have for now. And so definitely then you can see show like management, like, hey, look how much value I'm adding. We used to have tons of injection everywhere. Now we have none. Carlos says, does the right tool take a HAR as input for scanning? Yes, it can do that. Most like good dynamic scanners can do that. So yes, it does it. Okay, so the next one is technology specific tests. So if your app is not made with WordPress, don't do WordPress tests. That's a waste of time, right? So the We Hack Purple website, the main website is WordPress. So I would want to do all the WordPress tests. However, it does not have an MS SQL database behind it. So why would I bother doing those tests? It's not written in Ruby. Don't do those tests. It's not hosted in AWS or Azure. It's in like a private, just like WordPress specific hosting place. So why do those tests? So the idea is just remove all of the technology tests that don't apply to your product or your software that you are building. So quite often, I was a .NET programmer for a long time. And then I went to work for Microsoft and literally no one was surprised. They're like, oh, the ultimate Microsoft fangirl is gonna go work at Microsoft. That makes sense. But so there'd be no reason for me to do Java tests or Ruby tests or like no SQL I would do MS SQL tests. I would do tests for Azure because obviously, like, Microsoft owns Azure, so of course my apps live there. And so take away all the different technologies that you're not using for and don't run those tests. So that will remove like maybe 20% of the time of every scan right off the top. So even if you're doing like a monthly manual scan and it's going overnight, why bother running tests that just don't apply? It's just extra time for no reason. So this will just save you cloud bill time, honestly, like just save you money of like having to run those tests. It's not very much money you're going to save, but why bother running tests that just don't apply whatsoever? Like if you're hosted in Azure, there's no point in looking for an S3 bucket that's open because if none of your company uses AWS, why bother? Okay, I want to quickly talk about testing APIs. So this is another interesting image that Unsplash, I looked up APIs and it showed me this picture and I'm like, that has nothing to do with APIs, but it's really beautiful. So I'll use that picture. So if you were going to test an API, okay, thank you, Venki. If you're going to test an API with a dynamic scanning tool, you must have a completed definition file. So some people call this a schema, like an API schema. Some people call it a Swagger file, the open API file, the API definition file, whatever you want to call it. But it's the thing that tells you like, these are the different functions and these are the rules. Like this is the HTTP method that you can use to call this function. So you can call the delete my picture function and it's going to be on a delete HTTP method call, or we're going to do a get or a post. Get and post are the most popular, but with APIs, sometimes we use put, delete, etc. So that file needs to be complete. So what do I mean by that? So when I was a dev, I did what lots of devs do, and I just did as much stuff in there as I needed so that when I called it, it did what I wanted. But I didn't put like a minimum and a maximum for every single field. I didn't even know you had to do that or that that was a thing you could do. I have not been a dev for around 8 years now. I switched over to security quite a long time ago. But basically, you should be putting a minimum and a maximum for every type of value. You should be putting what type it is. Any sort of thing that you can do to create like a specific bound. So let's say it's a date. Okay, so if it's a date of birth, it must be in the past. Cool. Can it be more than 150 years in the past? No. What is the date format? It's this date format, etc. So if you go through and add all of those things, oh, so I'm hoping people can
We
hear
can
me.
still hear you, Tanya. I'm just helping. I'm helping her troubleshoot.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so quite often, dynamic scanners get pointed at an API and we feed in the definition file and it's not complete. So it doesn't say minimum or maximum. It doesn't say anything like that. And so what happens is people like feed it in and then the DAST doesn't know what to test. It doesn't know what's right or wrong. It doesn't know if something's going wrong. It's just like, I sent the thing and it came back with an answer. I guess this is fine. You didn't tell me what answer it should. It said, 5 zillion years in the past. I don't know, you didn't tell me that's bad. Maybe someone was born a zillion years in the past. I don't know. And it just like, it's like check mark. So if you want to scan an API with a dynamic scanning tool first, you must lint or correct or make sure you have fully filled out your API definition file. So the Bright scanner has one where you just pull up the definition file and it tells you everything that's missing. On the market, there is 42 Crunch, which has an IDE plugin, which will do this for you. And basically, it's a linter. So what you want is an API linter. And you open up the file, and then basically it just tells you all the things that are missing. You complete all those things, then you put it in the DAST tool. If you do not do this, the DAST will be like 2 thumbs up, no matter what garbage you have written. I used to work somewhere and we were making APIs, and it was kind of like the first year they were making APIs. They're super excited. We made like 27 or something the first year. We're like, we love APIs. And every single one that I would point my DAST tool, so I was using AppScan, I would point and it would be like 2 thumbs up, it's perfect. And I was like, I don't mean to sound rude when talking to the devs. I'm just like, I don't think you made 27 APIs, the first APIs you've ever made, and there's 0 vulnerabilities in any of them. Like, I'm looking at it and I see your cookie settings are bad. I'm looking at it, I'm seeing your security headers are bad. I can tell things are bad, but it's not finding it. I don't know why. So this is why it wasn't working, because the API definition files weren't complete. So then it couldn't actually do a proper scan. So please, if you are going to scan an API with a DAST file, awesome. First, you must lint the API. Okay, so I want to go to Prakash's question first. So Prakash says, a second, is the VM to test break hack API? So if you have a virtual machine, yes, you can put your API on there and then you can test it. Absolutely. You can also put it on a container, or depending upon how your IDE, like your programming interface works, you can run it in localhost and then point it. It depends on the dynamic scanning tool you're using, and it depends on just like what works best for you. So I used to test things in localhost quite a bit. Bright is a SaaS tool, so it's outside your network, but I'm gonna like basically you can bring it inside your network and still shoot things, but most dynamic scanners can work in those 3 things. So localhost, on a container, on a virtual machine, all those things are okay to hack your API or your web app. I hope I answered your question. Okay, so is there an open VM to work on? Are you asking for this workshop, or are you asking in general? So there are virtual machines with intentionally vulnerable web apps on them available on the internet, especially on the OWASP website. They have a list of all sorts of them. Am I providing one during this workshop? No, I'm not. We're going to use GitHub Actions. We're super behind though. So originally this was 1 hour and I've asked to extend it. So we're going to have 1.5 hours to 2 hours to try to finish this. So I just want to tell you there's more time. If you can't make it to the end, that's okay. So Lewis, what's the strategy to test APIs that require a valid JWT token to access them? Does there have to be an unsecured version in a development environment? Actually, Lewis, what you do is you create an authentication object. So in the dynamic scanner, you tell it basically the rules of your JWT token, and you feed it like token values, and then it sends it back and forth from the API and the web app for you. And so we aren't going to cover like advanced authentication as part of this, but basically like Bright does it, NetSparker does it, Acunetics does it. I like most dynamic scanners, they recognize that people have to log in, that people have like session management. And so you set up like what the parameters are of how someone would authenticate. So that means tell the computer who they are, and then authorization is like, oh, it's Tanya, we know her, she's fine, she is allowed to go do X, Y, and Z. And so you create this authentication plan with them, and you can even have multiple steps where it will go through and even do multi-factor authentication steps automatically for you. It takes like a little while for you to set it up because it's more than just you logging in. You have to tell it like, this is what you can expect, or this is how you generate the MFA token. And you set all that up, and then it'll just do it for you every single time automatically, which is awesome. Back when I first started, none of them did that. Now, most of them do it out of the box, which is awesome, because how are you supposed to test anything that has MFA? And obviously we want MFA. Okay, so this is actually, let me go back. So this slide is about places where we can do dynamic scanning within the system development lifecycle. So dynamic scanning requires that your app be running so it can interact with it. And so the first place that you could possibly do this would be with a unit test. So when you're doing unit tests with your coding, it spins up a little baby web server, and then it does like it tests your tiny unit of code. This is tests that software developers write. There are now security companies like Bright, but other ones too, where they create a security unit test for you. And so it will go do like a little tiny security test on this little unit of code that you have other tests for. This is the first time you could do any sort of dynamic scanning because it spins up the little baby web server to do the unit tests that like a dynamic unit security testing tool can take advantage of that little baby web server that's just testing the smallest unit of code. So this isn't very popular. Not very many people are doing this right now because previously you had to do it manually. You had to write these yourselves. I've done conference talks about how you can write them yourselves and the value and how much it's worth, and people should do it. But I'm hoping now that there's companies offering to automate this, that more people will do it because it is hard to write tons of unit tests manually. So then the next thing is as soon as you can publish your stuff to the dev server, because I always had like a dev server where I would publish things and then I'd play with it, then you can, as a dev, run a dynamic scanner against your own, like, you know, your app's totally not finished and that's okay, but you're like, I just want to know if I've done anything really terrible. Could you please tell me? So the next time is during the testing phase. So if you want to, like, let's say you're doing, like you're having a pen test done, or let's say you have a QA person and they're doing manual testing, you're like, you know, run this overnight and then let's see the results tomorrow. You could also have like a security expert come in and do a manual pen test, and they always use a dynamic scanner, but they usually use many tools, not just one tool. They do lots of manual testing. They use all their expertise to try to infiltrate your app. And so this is another phase where you could do dynamic scanning. Then if you're going to do CI/CD, so if you're using a pipeline to release stuff, you want to do tests there, but smaller tests, like I said, and then a scheduled weekly or monthly scan in production, like you were saying earlier in the chat. So if you're going to pay for this tool, use it everywhere you can to get all the value you can, because you're looking at it in a different state. So like I said, the earlier, the further left, so the further this way we can get. Are you able to share the slide deck after the talk? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how to, but what I can do is I can email it to the organizers, and then the organizers can hopefully share it out to the attendees, because that would be great. But so we want to know as soon as possible about bugs, and that's why we're testing here. During the testing phase, we're allowed to do tons of tests, so that's why we're testing here. Then in a CI/CD, we want to test again to make sure, you know, that tiny change doesn't turn into a big bug. And then once things are in production, we continue to test in case things have changed. Akira says, I think the organizations or the organizers are putting all the recordings on YouTube. Oh, that's awesome. Thanks. Okay, so how does running a DAST feel? So like when I first started running a DAST, I found it super satisfying, and I felt like this, kind of like this, a little bit kind of like that, maybe like this. So basically, like I felt for the first time, like I am a hacker. Look how powerful I am. I found all these vulnerabilities. And I know I'm being really silly, but I'm being silly on purpose because quite frankly, it was really fun. And I was like, I can't, like, I don't know, I felt so smart. And I couldn't believe it that like a tool could just find things wrong for me that had evaded me for so long. And so, yeah, thank you. Strong cat memes, yes. Okay, so I want us to now set up. So I know that this was originally planned for 1 hour, but now we've been given up to 2 hours if we want to. So we have a whole hour left. Who wants to do this with me? So you can do these steps with me, or I can just demo stuff for you. So if you say, do it with you in the chat, we'll do it together. But if you just want a demo, I'll just do a demo and we don't have to do a demo. Okay, so who wants to do it with me and who wants to do a demo? I'm here for as long as there's content, the more the better. Okay, anyone else? Demo. Okay, so we have 2 votes for demo and 1 doing it together. Does anyone else want to vote? I see we have 47 people, but only 4 want to say things. Okay. Okay, cool. So we want to do a demo, and that is cool. So basically, I'm going to use my GitHub account, And then we are going to scan something called broken crystals. So broken crystals was created like by Bright Security so that they could test their DAST. It's wicked vulnerable. I've used all sorts of tools to scan it, and it is a disaster. It's awesome. So it's an intentionally vulnerable web app. And so we are going to basically set up the, I'm going to just show you basically the CI/CD pipeline. I'm going to clone it from them. I actually already cloned it last night just in case. And then we are going to edit the repo, and then we're going to run a scan. So I'm going to get out of here, and I am going to stop. I'm going to do a new share. And what I want to share is, how do I find the one that I'm looking for? This is, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so I cloned this repo basically like last night, or actually I cloned it a while ago because I was practicing, because that's what you do. You practice a lot for a workshop. So basically I cloned this into my repo. So let's go to GitHub, but then I want to go to my repo. And so if I look at all my repositories, so there's broken crystals, etc. And so I went here and I just clicked fork. And then it was like, actually, Tanya, you already own this. Oh, who am I logged in as? Oh, I'm signed in. Oh no, I should not be signed in as that one. Sign out. I don't want to sign in as that one. So I'm going to sign in as me instead. And yes, I have a password manager, and it's going to like sign in for me. Okay, so I have a lot of accounts, as you might have guessed, in GitHub, because I do a lot of stuff in there. Okay, here we are, perfect. So I want to go to me, and I want to go to my repositories. Cool. And then I want to go to example. Actually, here we go. Oh, actually, no, I don't want to do this one. I want to go to my awesome workshop, just a second. Action workflow examples. No, not this one. I have a bunch of repositories. Why is it not showing me the one that I want? Don't worry. But this one was a long time ago. Fork from at, no, I don't want that one. The second. Oh, let's go here. So Bright used to be called Neurolegion, and that was like not super helpful when they changed their name recently. Yeah, I have a long password. Perfect. So this is the one I want. Okay, awesome. So I want to fork this one. And it's like, Tanya, you actually already forked this before. So you would just press the fork button, you would fork it, and then you would see this. And so what I did is I edited the README file last Monday so that I could show people this running and what it looks like. But basically, let me show you my code. And I'm gonna like change a few things in it so you can see what it looks like. So if we go to the code and we go to workflows, this is what GitHub Actions look like. So it's a YAML file, and you can have a few of them, and it'll run a few pipelines for you at the same time, which is super cool. But I just did one, and basically it copies all this code from Bright. And you can do this with all sorts of people that have CI/CD. So if you're working somewhere with someone and they made their own pipeline, you can copy this pipeline and then you can run it. Lewis says, is Bright app a new name for Nextploit? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So they were called Neurolegion, and their product was called Nextploit. And then now they have changed their name to Bright, and the product is just called the Bright Scanner. And so is that confusing? Yes, it is. And when did that happen? 4 weeks ago. And so we haven't updated everything yet. And so it takes a while, which is a bit frustrating. But basically, it plans out a test for me. And so in this test, I said, just look for these things, and then it runs. So remember we talked about only testing specific things. So I just decided I wanted to test the security headers. I wanted to test cross-site scripting. I wanted to test XML external entities. I wanted to test apparently broken SAML authentication. I don't really want to test that. I wanted to test to see if there's common files like robots.txt that are visible that shouldn't be. And I wanted to see if server-side request forgery was there. And so then it goes and it scans brokencrystals.com. You can instead have it not scan a live site. You can actually spin up a Docker server, put your app in there, have it run in the CI/CD, do all of your hacking, then destroy those resources, let the Docker thing go, and then on top of that, like run your, like get your results. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this from within a CI/CD, but basically then it runs and it just tells me if there's high or medium issues. And so if I want to run this, I have it set for any branch, any pull request, and then a cron job on Thursdays, but we don't need to worry about that. So basically, if anyone pushes to any branch or if there's any pull requests on main, it's going to run. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to edit this and I'm going to say, you know what? I see the list of tests that you want to run, and I don't want to run this broken XAML authentication. And I'm just going to click start. And so I'm going to put removed. How do you even spell XAML? SAML off test. And I know I spent, yeah, there we go. There's no E, thank you. I'm going to commit my changes. And what this is going to do is it's going to kick off a CI/CD run. So if we go over to actions, so the code for your actions, the instructions of what to do is this YAML file. But to see things run, you go to the actions tab. And then you can go into the CI/CD. Like if I had a bunch of different, you would see them all running here. And so it's like I removed my SAML auth test. And so a job to run an exploit scan, which should obviously say a bright scan. And they already know they're working on changing all the names of everything. So as I'm giving this workshop at various places, the names are going to change, which is super confusing. And so we can click on this and see it doing stuff. But the other thing we can do is we can like log in to the Bright tool and see how it says, again, app.neurallegion.com. I know this is confusing and I'm sorry. And so I'm going to sign in with my account. And then inside here, soon we're going to be able to see, it looks like a scan stopped. Are you having any issues? Well, which scan? So it says, so these are my older scans that I did, but soon the scan we're doing should show up. So if we come over here, well, a lot of stuff is happening. Okay, so once it says start an exploit scan, we should be able to see a new scan pop up here. We'll hit the refresh button. It's not ready yet because we can see it's not all the way down there. So when the NeuralLegion people and I created this list of exploit or created this list of example things, we did this example GitHub action thing in 2020. And basically we figured out it had to stop running for 30 seconds. We had to let it sleep because sometimes it was not so awesome and it would start scanning, but it wouldn't be ready yet. And it was a bit of a disaster. So we're like, we're just gonna let it sleep for 30 seconds, which feels like a pretty long time when we're trying to give a demo. Like it feels like a long time to sleep 30 seconds. But if we go through here and we go to example, oh, actually it's my super fun. So can we look up? No. I know that I have a repository that's like, actually, I think I can go here. So it's sleeping 30 seconds, so that's good. But I wanna like open up the code in a new tab so that we can see it. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy going through the screen there fast. So if we go to the workflow, we go here, it's going to, so it's like set up all the stuff, you know, tell us what's happening, start a Docker container so that we can run stuff, sleep 30 seconds. So that's what it was just doing. And then it starts the Docker logs and then it's like, we're going to start our scan now. So let's do this. So hopefully So sudo docker run this, so it's doing it. The files belong to this database. System will be owned by user progress. Okay, that sounds fine. So it's doing stuff. This is good. Okay, to the bottom. Okay, so now it is starting an exploit scan. It's getting the output. Now it's waiting for issues. So right now what it's doing is it is running a scan. Oh, error, process completed with exit code 1. Okay, so stop the scan. It ran the post checkout. It completed the job. So let's see what happened here. So waiting for issues. It exited. Get output from scan. So it's putting it into our scan account. So let's go look. So let's refresh. Done. That doesn't make sense. This is kind of confusing because I feel like it should have a scan here. Second, let me look at my project. So default project, it has a lot of problems. Scans, refresh. I have 4 scans, it should show me a scan. So let's see what the error is. So completed with error code 1. So starting pull, error during scan pulling, 1 or more validation errors occurred. Okay, so you've run printf, get started, scan ID. Let's look for my scan ID. So this is the fun part of doing a live demo. So this is a setup, so let's search. And it cannot find my scan ID, but I am Tanya. Oh, wait, just a second. I think I might be logged into the wrong second, sign in. Actually, I'm pretty sure that I'm signed in as the wrong one. Just a second, shxpurple@gmail.com. And I forgot my password. So let's see how the reset password goes. So send a reset password, go to sign in. Actually, you know what? Maybe I know my password. Oh, okay, it let me in. Okay, so I was just in the wrong account. So this is good to know. Okay, so this is stopped. And let's go back and get my scan ID. So where was my scan ID? Here, copy. So let's make sure that I actually have the right scan. No scans found with this scan name, scan ID. Search. Aha, here we go. So this is my scan. So let's see what it said. Ellipse time, discovery points, 0, DAST scanner. Okay, so issues, progress. Progress information's unavailable. This is really not good. Engine notifications. Scan started, scan stopped 30 seconds later. That's weird. Entry points there. Sitemap, network, tech stack, doesn't really matter. Engine log. I don't know. I'm going to generate a log. So it's going to email me the log. Thank you. So this is really weird. I don't know what's going on. That's very confusing. Broken crystals, target scan. And these are the tests that I asked for. I am not sure why this test didn't run. URL query, URL fragment body, repeaters. I don't know, maybe I broke something when I was doing my thing. A second, let's go here and go to Neurolegion. And then I'm gonna go to the examples one. Example actions. And I'm just gonna copy their entire workflow because I did mess with it a lot during B-Sides Vancouver. Oops, no. I wanna just do this one. Copy, and so let's go back here. And I'm gonna go to my code. I'm gonna edit my code and see if like maybe basically I broke it. So now I'm testing for slightly different testing. So I'm looking for open buckets, I'm looking for secret tokens, I'm looking for security headers still, but I'm also looking for DOM-based cross-site scripting and CServe, cross-site request forgery. So I'm going to try to start commit again. Copied workflows from original repo. So let's commit our changes and let's watch this again, because that should have run and I'm not exactly sure what's happening and like why that would misbehave like that. Because it was running last Monday a lot and I didn't mess with it that much. Because sometimes I change things and edit things and play around with them. And then eventually I'm like, oh, there's a lot of stuff happening. I don't know. So this is going to take a minute to run. And while it's running, I want to actually show you a few more slides because I have a lot of slides still to go through. And then we're going to look at this outcome in a second. So I believe I'm sharing. No. Second, stop share. Start share again. We can do this. Desktop 2. Share. There. Okay, good. So I'm going to start the slideshow from current slide. So we've gone through and done a few things here. There are a lot of slides to get things going. So if your slide, basically, while we wait for the results, I wanted to show you a few other ways that basically you can get DAST to work in your CI/CD pipeline, because you don't need to put, or sorry, I want to show ways that you can use DAST not in your CI/CD pipeline, because we were talking before about how DevOps is about automation, efficiency, and high quality. DevOps does not demand anywhere that every single thing must happen in a CI/CD. There are certain tests that you must do, but when you do regression testing, you don't need to do 100% of the tests. You do you retest the things, like someone fixes one bug, you're not going to run your entire QA cycle again. So it's like, how can we see those small things that change that are important in the CI/CD pipeline, but you still want to do very thorough testing regularly? So one of your options is that you can run scheduled, automated, regular tests. So this could be once a week or once a month. Quite often it's in production, but it could also be in pre-prod if you have like a mirroring sort of environment where it's a copy of what is in production. So if you're going to pay for a DAST, you usually aren't paying per scan. You're usually paying for X number of seats or X number of licensing. So you might as well run it regularly and see what's happening. And so you can actually have it so the email results for each scan go to you and then also to whatever dev team owns and maintains that app, so that everyone is not spammed across your organization, because that would be bad. But you want to make sure this information actually gets to the people that need it. And that's the software developers and the operations folks that support and maintain those applications. Another thing you could do is do a one-off or a manual scan. So last year I did some work doing M&A, so mergers and acquisitions. And yes, I was acquired last year, but on top of that, Leandro is saying, I'm becoming that it's more common to pay for agents, like concurrent scanning, rather than the number of scope or IP addresses. Yeah, I'm seeing that too, Leandro. I'm definitely seeing that too. I'm also seeing like scan hours, I'm seeing per developer, I'm seeing per app. Like, yeah, with one app having like a front end and then like 50 different IPs for all of its APIs, it gets very expensive. So when I was like helping this company buy another company, what I did is I went and did a manual scan of their applications of each one, because we don't own this company. We don't have the rights to scan it all the time, but it's like, we need to see a basic picture as to the health of your applications. And so I found a ton of things wrong. And then eventually they ended up being able to negotiate a lower price, because it's like, it's going to cost us at least $100,000 to make this app safe enough so that we can put it on our network with our other apps. And so they renegotiated the price based on this security testing. The first time I scan anything, I always do it manually and check it out and play with it, and then I start automating. Another reason that you would do like not in the CI/CD, would be penetration testing. And this is something that like I still think is very important. And yes, they do use dynamic scanners, but they do more. They do manual testing. They try to look at it from an attacker point of view and attack the business logic. And while Bright does have some business logic testing within it, like it'll never be the same as having someone whose brain is trained and has trained for years and years to do security testing. Humans are smarter than machines. This is why we boss them around. I want to just quickly check and see where we are with our scan results. So it says we exited with code 50. And just a second, let me see where we are at in my scan results. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing right now, so that's probably very boring. So if I look at my scans, I still don't see that scan. I don't know what is wrong today. This is very weird because I have a scan and it says it has no issues. Oh, that's because I was just looking for that one scan ID. Aha! Okay, so let me actually show you what I'm looking at because it's not fun to not see what I'm doing. Firefox scans. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is the scan that I just ran. So it's on broken crystals and it says we have one high issue and one low issue. And so if we look at it, so this is for branch number 11. It took 28 seconds to run. Well, that's really fast. We found one high issue and one low issue, which seems kind of interesting. So if we look through the issues, so we scanned broken crystals, but if we look through the issues, it found an open bucket and then it found a potential cross-site request forgery. So it's saying, you know, you weren't authorized, but you sent this request. So an open bucket, if we look at this, so it means an open S3 bucket, an Amazon S3 bucket has full read permissions. This might result in leakage of sensitive information. So that seems pretty bad. And it's giving a link to OWASP if we want to read more stuff, but basically it says check the permissions and restrictions on your bucket. So this is interesting. So it detected a few things. Oh, and then additional resources. So it went and it actually took things out. Oh, you have to drop Andreas? Okay, well, thank you. Awesome, thank you soon. So when it looked and it found some photos and is trying to say like, listen, I was inside your bucket and I took out this picture of a plane within some trees from your bucket to show you that there's a problem. Cool, okay. So if we go back to the scan and we look at these, so we have one high and one low. That's all we found. So if we go back here, oops, we go back. So let's go here and we want to see our actions. Or is this the one? Nope, is this the one? Aha, this is the one we just did. So it stopped the scan and then it did its cleanup or whatever. And so it said exit code 50. So basically it found its first high issue and then it stopped. So we told it, this is a thing a lot of people do. We told it, if you find a problem in the CI/CD and it's high, break the build. So that's what it did, it broke the build. So if we go back to our code and we look at the code for the workflow for this, so for our CI/CD, oh, it's showing me stuff that I fixed or stuff that I changed. Copied workflows from here. Okay, so why are you showing me this in like this gross edited version? Why code? So it's forked from here and I want to go look at my workflows and I'm in here. Ah, this is much better. Okay, this is what I want. If we come down near the bottom, we told it break the build if you find any high issues. So we stopped. So we could have let this keep running. And because I know Broken Crystals has lots of problems, I know we would have found a whole bunch of things wrong with it. But because we told it, we can't let this go to prod. We must stop, we must break the build if we find a high issue. So it stopped, so it found a low issue, which is fine, we're cool with that. It didn't find any medium issues yet. It found a high issue, it's like, no, I must break the build. You must stop, you cannot continue to production. And this is what we wanted, right? So we got the thing we wanted. I mean, ideally, when you scan your applications. You're not going to find highs all the time. Ideally, you're going to be like, at first, you're going to find maybe criticals or highs. You fix those, but over time, you stop finding those because you've learned lessons about how to make more secure code. So let's go back to my slides and let's finish looking at it and wrap up, because we had a short demo, which went a bit awkwardly because of whatever I did with my whatever I did to my CI/CD pipeline while I was playing around with the people from Vancouver. But yes, okay, so I want to talk about other tests that we can do, because we talked about at the beginning, you don't want to just do a dynamic scan. We want to look at our application from multiple angles. So other testing that you can do, and you can automate a lot of this, static application security testing. So what does my written code look like? The code that my team wrote. Does it look okay? Are there things that look like it might be a vulnerability? Software composition analysis. So this is where it looks at your written code again, but it just looks at all the libraries, the third-party components, the NuGet packages, the Ruby gems. Are any of those known already to be vulnerable? And if so, which ones and how? Is it critical? Is it high? Is it low? And so it will tell you, you have these packages and this is what we suggest or do not suggest for these. IaaS, so this is interactive application security testing, and this is a newer type of software product. And basically and by newer, I mean it's around 7 years old. So you can put an IaaS, it's a binary, and it goes up inside your application, which means it's technology specific. So if you're using something like .NET or Java, it'll probably be compatible, but if you're using something that is significantly older, or if you're using something that is more unusual, like the Crystal programming language, there's not as many people using it, so it's probably not supported. And it does testing as you use the application. So perhaps during a penetration test or quality assurance or user acceptance testing, and it'll tell you from the inside out where there's vulnerabilities. It's later in the system development lifecycle, but it's supposed to be really cool and just get a different look at your app. Secret scanning. So that is where you scan the written code and look for things that are secrets. This could be a connection string, it could be a certificate, it could be a hash, it could be an API key. And basically it tells you, I think I found something that should not be in your code. This should be in a secret management tool. Could you please address this? And so these are other types of testing, and you should do at least some of them. So I usually start with DAST, but I do not stop there. There's way more that you should do. And I just want to say, because sometimes you give a presentation on this one thing and people are cool, I just need to do that. I'm like, no, there's more. So I just wanted you to know there's more. Okay, conclusion. Oh, what are the false positive rates in secret scanning? I think that it really depends on your tool. So the first time, and it depends on what you consider a false positive. So I used it at one organization, and they used a thing that would send emails from their software. And what it would do is it would basically like go through, find everything. And so this software that they had bought like 15 years ago that just sends an email from your app, that company went out of business. And so they had the license key for the software like all throughout their software. And I was like, is this really a secret per se? Because the company doesn't exist anymore. It's not like they're going to steal this license. They paid for the license a long time ago. They're still using it. Like if someone gets the secret, what could they do? Send email? Like, so we decided it was like a low, like they'd still have to write a custom app to send the email. And it's just like, you could also just email if you're broken into this network. So we decided it wasn't a risk, but I wouldn't call it a false positive because it was still a secret, if that makes sense. But we decided to just accept that risk. But sometimes there are false positives, especially if I've worked places where they've had computer generated code, like someone makes something in a fancy GUI and then it generates it behind, and the variable names are really weird and odd. It was awful. So I've seen that, but it's very rare. So conclusion, we need to do dynamic scanning because any person on the internet without advanced skills can run a DAST tool. Ooh, Leandro, that's a really good point. He says sometimes secrets were rotated already, and if you consider that a false positive, then there's quite a few. I don't consider that a false positive because it's still like a lesson we need to learn. Like we should still remove it from the code. But yeah, it's still not awesome to have our secret stored in there because if they've already rotated it, but where did they rotate it to? Did they just put it in the code somewhere else? I would be worried if the original wasn't removed. So we need to do dynamic scanning. I personally start there. You don't have to start there, but I feel it's important. We already knew automation was our friend. Hopefully I've reinforced this for you. Dynamic testing in a pipeline must be fast and accurate. If you can't accomplish those things, you should yank it out so you can maintain good relationships with dev and ops. We can do dynamic testing outside the pipeline and still be DevOps friendly and still maintain all those awesome relationships. Other types of testing are still needed so we can find as many vulnerabilities as possible. And the bright people are rather silly, and we really enjoy cats that have laser beams coming out of their eyes. So this is just a little summary. And so now I have some resources for you, and all of them except the book is free. So yay, resources. So these are a bunch of DevOps books, and then the last one's the book I wrote. But basically the DevOps Handbook, the Phoenix Project, Accelerate, the Unicorn Project, Alice and Bob Learn Application Security. So the first 4 books are about DevOps. I don't think we can do security right if we're not doing IT right. And I believe DevOps is the way forward, is the best way to make software. And so I'm a huge believer in DevOps. I really love it. I can't wait till all of us are releasing our code with pipelines. That day will come. I truly believe it. Leandro says it's nice to have secret injection at runtime and secret management to keep the hygiene and rotation. Yes. I have a podcast. It's called the We Hack Purple podcast. We just released another episode last week. Season 2 are little tiny security lessons. So any podcast platform, or you can watch me speak with my guests on YouTube. The We Hack Purple community is free, and I'd like to invite you to join it. So there's no upsells or anything. And all the previous courses that were in the We Hack Purple Academy, all those full-length courses are now in the community for free as part of the acquisition by Bright. So you can go and take a secure coding course or take an application security course for free. Thank you, Leandro. So you're all invited, and I'll be there. And Leandro, if you want to hang out with us. Bright has a blog. So Bright's blog is highly technical. There's a lot of, so basically every time you find a vulnerability, they wrote a blog post about it and how to fix it. So if you're looking for remediation advice or other things like that, their blog's really good. Every Monday on Twitter, I do something called Cyber Mentoring Monday. So if you are looking for a professional mentor, or you're a person that's worked in security forever and you want to take someone under your wing and help them join our industry, help them excel, we pair people. So you kind of pair yourselves. So basically someone's like, I need a mentor, and then other people answer them. Or you say, I know a lot about blah. If you want to know about this, like I'd be happy to meet with you online and we could talk. Every Monday I do this on Twitter and it goes really well. And the last resource the second last resource I want to give you is me. So I'm She Hacks Purple on all the different platforms like YouTube, Reddit, everywhere. I have a YouTube channel, I have a blog, I have a newsletter, I do lots of stuff, and I'm here to be a nerd with you. And so if you want more free content like this, I am your lady. Lastly, you can stay in touch with the Open Security Summit community. So you can connect with other people on the Slack channel. There's jobs, like if you're looking to hire or if you're looking to find a job, there's a whole bunch more. And basically they're having regular events. So if you want to join their Slack, it is free and there's lots of nice people there for you to meet. And with that, I am Tanya Janca, and I want to say thank you so much for your time today. And I really hope you had a good time. And I hope that you, in whatever CI/CD you're using, that you are considering adding dynamic scanning. Thank you so much. Are there any more questions? Does anyone want anything else? I am here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for all your questions and your participation. It makes it a lot more fun. And yeah, cool. Thank you. I'm glad I figured out which GitHub account I need to be logged into, which Bright account. It only took me a few minutes. I think I need to delete those accounts before my next workshop, so I don't want to mess things up. Oh, cool. Thank you, Leandro. That's very generous. Oh, you watched Akira's last week. Does the Nextploit plugin for Azure DevOps take the place of the repeater? Yes, it does, Lewis. It does the repeater for you. So the repeater is so you can scan inside your network because we're a SaaS product. And so to get inside your network, you need the repeater. Also, if you're going to scan from your network and go out, you need the repeater so that you go from your IP address instead of the Bright IP address, because if you do something malicious, we do not want to get in trouble on your behalf. Do I have any more workshops? So there's an Azure security workshop that I did years ago that is on my YouTube channel. So you could look there, but I also have a whole bunch of different types of demos and other things that I did as part of the owasp dev slot project. I'm just going to put this in here. So on YouTube, they have their own channel. And so I helped start that project years ago with my friend Nicole, who's still one of the project leaders, and then Nancy Garishe, who's super awesome and who you should definitely check out. She basically took my place on the project leading. So she joined, and then eventually I floated away to run We Hack Purple. And they have tons of demos and all sorts of different workshops. They're really amazing. I highly recommend the DevSlot team for everyone. Does Bright have a self-hosted option? Not that I'm aware of. Basically, like if it's an enterprise, because we're a startup, sometimes they can be flexible, but I don't know of any client that they have a self-hosted option for yet. If you want, email me, Leandro, tanya.janca@brightsec.com, or oh, you put a picture of my book, thank you. Is there a way to export the output from BrightScan to my SonarQube server? Yes, we have a bunch of different ways where you can export the data. So you can do it in a comma delimited list. That's usually what I do, or you could do a PDF, and I think you can do HTML as well. Oh, thank you, Prakash, awesome. But yeah, so you can definitely export the data, and like a comma, a CVS file, like a comma delimited list is usually the easiest way to export the data. So like if you want to import it somewhere else, I find that the easiest way. Oh, thank you very much, Akira. Thank you. Awesome. And thank you very much to the Open Security Summit for having me. I really appreciate it. They had me earlier this year, and they had me in person in 2018, and it was absolutely amazing. The whole OWASP DevSops team, well, actually, I guess Nicole couldn't make it, but 4 of us or 3 of us were there, and we got to build a lot of awesome things together. It was really quite great. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. I really, really, really appreciate it. Does anyone have any last questions before we sign off? Yeah, I'm going to sign off soon too. Oh my gosh, I'm out of focus. Come on, camera. There we go. That's a little better. Yeah, there we go. I hope that wasn't too annoying for everyone. It's weird when you see the person and they're out of focus because you just keep kind of squinting. Do you know if there are any considerations for scanning a Blazor WebAssembly application? I'm not sure, actually. Lewis, if you want, you could email me and I could find out more. Let me just put my email in. So I know that we can scan any web app, but I'm not sure if there's specific tests for Blazor WebAssembly. But just because I don't know about it doesn't mean that there isn't one, just because I haven't made a Blazor app before. So please send me an email and I'll find out for you. Because then I know how to contact you and actually tell you the answer. So if I go find it out and I don't have your email, then I'll forget. Yeah, so a DAST can scan any web app, but we have specific extra tests for specific technologies. So like there's a bunch of extra WordPress tests, there's a bunch of extra MS SQL tests, et cetera, et cetera. So I think he's asking, are there specific technology tests for that? And I don't know the answer yet because no one has asked me that before. Cool. Are there any other questions? I want to thank Akira for coming and helping and answering questions. That was really great. I appreciate you being here. Thank you to the the Open Security Summit for having me. Thank you all of you for attending. I really appreciate it. You took time out of your day to come and hang out with me, and that basically workshops are really more fun when there's more people participating. So I appreciate that. And I will see you hopefully soon at another Open Security Summit, if not somewhere else like the We Hack Purple community. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we've gone